And for those of you who joined a little early, please enter your name, your organization, where you're calling in from into the chat so we can get to know who's online. Really excited that you're all here. People are still joining. Colorado, Illinois, North Carolina. It's great to see everybody. Vermont, we've got Canada. Really happy to see everybody joining. We'll just take a few more minutes as people get online. Thank you for joining us today. You're in for a really wonderful discussion today. Texas and Kentucky. So great. Several from Canada. Excellent. And everybody will get a copy of the recording and a copy of the chat. So don't need to take notes. You'll get a copy of everything in the slides. And we'll get started in just another few seconds as people are joining. So great to see so much interest in this topic. Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Judy Browse and I'm the Executive Director of NAAEE and really happy to see you for today's webinar, which is all about access nature and inclusion in the outdoors. And we're really lucky to have such wonderful speakers today that I'll introduce in a minute. But in the chat, as I'm talking, why don't you also put your favorite outdoor activity that you like to do in spring, wherever you are in the chat. We know that everybody likes to do different things outside. So what is your favorite thing to do? Ooh, nature journaling. We've got dog walking, gardening. That's all so great. And what we're going to talk about today is how do we create spaces in nature that are truly welcoming for disabled people? What does accessibility actually mean? How do we implement it as educators and leaders? And what are some things that we can actually do in our communities and the work that we do to make nature more accessible to everyone? So really excited about the topic today, really excited about our two amazing speakers, Syren and Loren, who I will introduce in just a minute. And I also just wanted to mention that April is National Autism Awareness Month. It's important that we think about autism all the time, not just this month, but it's also nice to have the webinar this month to be able to emphasize the need for accessibility for all. And we'll be hearing more about what does it mean to make nature more accessible and what we all can do to think about the people that have normally not been able to feel welcome in the outdoors and some of the issues that people face that we might not think about if we are able-bodied and do not have the disabilities that others have. So for those of you who know NAAEE, you know that our webinars are all about trying to bring new ideas and new thinking to the field. We want to always push the envelope, and we really appreciate the suggestions that you are bringing to all of us on what topics are most important to you. And this is part of our eeINSPIRE webinar series, which is all about sparking innovation in environmental education, a partnership between NAAEE and the Forest Service. And so excited that Rachel is here, and thanks to her and her team for all the work that they do in conservation education. And Rachel, do you want to say a few words?
Just hello, so excited to see how many people have joined today. This is just such an incredibly important topic. And so we're pleased to be able to support it and work with, help support our folks in the regions and at the forest doing this and all of their partners. And if you're not currently partnering with the Forest Service, reach out. We'd love to do so. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Thanks, Rachel. And again, thanks for all you do. And I also want to thank all our affiliate co-hosts across North America who are supporting the webinar series and for all the work that they do in their state, their region, and their provinces to advance environmental education and civic engagement. And if you don't know about your affiliate, please look them up. They're doing amazing work. And thanks to EPA and EE360 for helping to support this webinar series and for allowing us to have such great speakers coming to our webinars. I know a lot of you know Zoom, but a lot of you use other things, including Teams and other systems. So just so you know, everybody is on mute. Use the chat to ask questions if you need any help. And everybody will get a copy of the recording, a copy of the chat, and a copy of the slides. But throughout this, please type your questions, any resources that you have that you think others would be interested in. That is always so helpful because we learn from each other on these webinars. And we have live captioning for today if anyone needs help with the audio. And thank you to Sally for doing our live captioning. We really appreciate you being here today. And a big thank you to Anne, who is our webinar guru and is on all of our webinars and helps do so much to make this series work. And Anne is not only our webinar guru, but she is the Director of Professional Development and the co-manager of EE360 and EE360 Plus. So now I would like to get to the best part, and that's introducing our speakers. And first, we're going to have Syren Nagakyrie, who is the founder of Disabled Hikers. And she's not only the founder, but she is one of the most powerful voices for this community. She is a multiply disabled, chronically ill, and neurodivergent person, and she'll talk more about that. But she has this passion for nature and creating spaces that offer a sense of belonging to everyone. And we're so excited, Syren, that you are here with us today. And then we also have Loren Penman, who originally from Connecticut, but lives in Western New York. And Loren has done so much as a volunteer, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, but she was in the public schools for 4 decades as a teacher and an administrator. And since retiring, she has been super busy, has won a lot of awards for all her work volunteering, including she is one of the Ants, and ANT stands for the Autism Nature Trail. And that's in Letchworth State Park in Western New York, and she'll talk more about that. So what we're going to do today is we'll hear from Syren first, take a few questions, then we'll hear from Loren, take a few questions, then we'll open it up to questions and discussion at the end, and we'll wrap up with a few words from Anne about what's coming up at NAAEE. So thank you, Syren and Loren, for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Syren. Thank you again.
Thank you, Judy. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I will go ahead and share my screen. All right. So again, thank you. I'm really excited to see everyone that is here and interested in discussing this topic. It is so important, and in my honest opinion, it is well past due to be having some of these conversations in the outdoor community. So very excited, very honored to be here and have this opportunity to share some information with all of you. So again, I am Syren. I use they, them pronouns, and I have multiple disabilities, chronic illnesses, and I am autistic and have other types of am neurodivergent. I founded Disabled Hikers in March of 2018 after really a lifetime of feeling frustrated and left out and excluded from outdoor spaces. It took a long time for me to even feel like recreating outdoors was something that I could do. There was just no resources growing up. I wasn't able to go to things like camps. My family didn't go camping or picnicking or summer vacations or things like that. So it was really not until my mid-20s or so that I started really exploring what my body could do in the outdoors and what being outdoors meant for me, and just immediately encountered, again, lack of resources, lack of accessibility, people who didn't really understand my needs or who I was or what I was asking for. So that just kind of course, built up over time. And in 2018, I had an experience where I was out hiking and was doing a trail section of a trail system that I had hiked several times, but the section was new to me. And of course, I did tons of research ahead of time. And immediately when I got to that trail and started on my hike, I encountered tons of obstacles and barriers, like things like steep stairs and rocky steep drop-offs that weren't mentioned anywhere in any of the guides that I read. And it really put me in a really kind of dangerous situation. And I wound up at my final destination at this waterfall and was just exhausted and in pain. And in that moment, inspiration kind of struck, and I just said, why don't I do something about this? And I went home and just kind of threw up a WordPress blog, and it really just kind of took off from there. And I'm really excited about the community that is growing around disabled hikers and the work that we're doing. And oh, I also forgot for accessibility, I'll give a visual description of myself. And so I am a white non-binary person with long brown hair. Behind me is just kind of a black void due to the lighting in the room. Apologies for kind of the headless, the head floating in the dark here. But yeah, and I will do that throughout the presentation and describe the slides for those who may not be able to see them. So who we are, this slide has 3 photos of diverse groups of hikers from our group hikes. And we are really more than anything a community. And we are one of the first organizations that have really grown up, grounded in principles of disability justice, and we are entirely disability led, and we will continue to remain that way. We are really focused on building disabled leadership in the outdoors and creating resources and opportunities that are by us and for us. Here we have a slide that on the left is a drawing that represents 3 disabled people in the outdoors. And there's a pond and mountains, and it really situates the people in the natural environment. So what do we do? Our mission is to build disability community and justice in the outdoors. Our vision is an outdoors culture transformed by access, representation, and justice for disabled and all other historically marginalized people. So we do all kinds of different work. That includes lots of advocacy work with parks and organizations and individuals to really help support some of these conversations in different communities. We provide resources such as trail guides and other information that are specific for disabled folks. We also offer group hikes and events, and we are working on developing a training program that will train other disabled people to do this work in their own communities. And that will include writing trail guides and doing advocacy work and learning how to work with parks and organizations in their communities. We also do offer lots of consultations and trail assessments and things like that to really help shift some of these conversations and resources that are out there. Our focus is, again, really on cultural change. So in this presentation, I'm really going to kind of give you a quick 10 to 15 minute crash course in Disability 101 and accessibility and what it means. I do want to say that this is, of course, a very complex and nuanced topic. I'm going to be speaking in kind of some generalities for simplicity, and there's a lot more to explore here than I can do in the time allowed. But I do want to say that, so I'm going to talk about language, and so oftentimes what people say is that, language isn't necessarily that important. They're just words. What do they matter? But they do matter a lot. Language really creates safety. And we'll talk about how much of this is really about creating safety for people. The words that we use can either break or reinforce stigmas. So really, they're not just words. They really are important. So this slide talks about person-first language versus identity-first language, and I will talk about some of these specific things that are listed here. So there is a lot of conversation, of course, within disability communities about the language that we use to describe ourselves. And you will often see person-first language or identity-first language. Person-first language is, for example, saying person with a disability, woman living with blindness, boy with autism. It puts the person before the disability. But what it can often do is separate the person from the disability. It's really, disability is really the only identity that uses person first language. For example, we don't say, I am a person with gayness, I'm just a gay person. So it's really important to keep in mind, to think like, why is disability the only identity that uses this language? And really, person first language kind of arose in response to the history of the medicalization and the pathology that was often associated with disability. And as some of the disability rights movement started gaining traction and the Americans with Disabilities Act became implemented, there was a lot of conversation about changing the language that we use to talk about disability to remove some of that stigma. So person first language arose out of that and really came into common usage through a lot of governmental entities and nonprofit organizations who are working in the disability rights movement. So it is, it is acceptable to use person first language, and it is used often, but many disabled folks do prefer identity first language, which is, as you often hear me say, disabled person. That is identity first language. It centers disability as the core part of someone's identity and does not separate the person from the disability. I am a disabled person. I cannot separate that from who I am. And when if we say someone is with a disability or with blindness or with autism, it implies that we can remove that disability or that autism from the person, but we can't. That is just who they are and how they experience the world. So again, identity first language is favored by a lot of advocates, activists, and disabled people. And I will say that it is always important to respect the individual person's language choice and never to question that. But if you are speaking generally or creating resources or speaking to the community in general, at the very least, alternate person first and identity first language so that you are relating to a broader variety of people within the communities. If I approach an organization or am interested in a program that is using only person first language, I will feel very excluded from that. So it's important to keep that in mind. So this slide is talking about language to avoid, and we're going to talk about euphemisms and outdated language. The euphemisms are words that are used in place of another word that is considered offensive. And we use euphemisms throughout the English language, and they're almost always, if you think about different euphemisms that use, they are almost always used in place of something that is considered shameful or offensive. So when we use euphemisms for disability, that is what we were saying, that disability is something that we shouldn't say, that it's a secret thing, it's a shameful thing, and we shouldn't say the word. But disabled is a perfectly acceptable word to use. So, some of the euphemisms that are often used are things like differently abled, handy capable, diverse abilities, special needs, any word that is really kind of used in place of the word disabled. I will say that, of course, especially when we come to the term special needs, I recognize that is used in many cases, such as education programs and things like that. There is, of course, a movement to change that within special needs education to just call it accessible education or disabled education instead of trying to use this euphemism. So outdated language. These are words that have often been previously used were used offensively about disabled people and were largely considered offensive by the community, but they were in common usage before. And, of course, as some of that shame and stigma has been broken down, those words are being moved out of the language. But they do still pop up often, and from people who may not be aware that they are offensive. So I just like to point out some of those. So these are words like handicapped, wheelchair bound, suffers from, for example, someone who suffers from Parkinson's, someone who suffers from cerebral palsy, and then words like impaired, vision impaired. We try to avoid language like that. And the word handicapped in particular comes up a lot when we're talking about accessibility. So people may refer to accessible features as, the handicapped stall. And I just encourage people to remove that word from their language and just refer to them as an accessible stall, accessible parking, and things like that. So this title slide says accessibility. What is it and how do we implement it? And accessibility has really come to mean a lot of different things. And I really caution people to be aware of how they're using that word. So particularly in the outdoor space, I often find people talking about creating an accessible outdoors, but then they're not talking about disability at all. So if we're talking about accessibility, we really need to be clear about what it is that we mean and who we are talking about. And I personally feel that you should not use the term accessible if you are not including disabled people in whatever it is that you're working on. But of course, accessibility, as we'll talk about, access is much broader than basic accessibility. So what is accessibility? This slide on the left, there are 4 accessible symbols. We have your typical wheelchair symbol on the upper left. Upper right has kind of a head with a brain in it. This represents cognitive or neurodivergent disabilities. On the bottom left, we have 2 hands, which represents ASL. And the bottom right, we have a stick figure using a cane, which represents visual accessibility and accessibility for people who are blind. So accessibility, your typical technical definition is that it refers to the characteristic that products, services, and facilities can be independently used by people with a variety of disabilities. It really tends to focus on meeting the legal requirements, and it really focuses on those individual rights. So we're talking about like really kind of the nitty-gritty features of accessibility. But unfortunately, often what happens is that people, when they hear accessibility, they think about really just wheelchair access, and they kind of forget about these other types of accessibility and other types of disabilities that need accommodations to be able to engage with the space. And by focusing on kind of this, the ability of a person to independently use the space, that really kind of places the focus on individual rights as opposed to the collective rights of people to access the space, as we'll talk about here in a moment. Often people will approach accessibility as just a list of ADA check boxes, and once they check those boxes, then they are all good. But that is not the case at all. Just checking a few boxes that kind of meet your basic legal requirements does not necessarily make a space accessible. It often leaves out some of the really important things, such as how someone is going to engage with the space. So when we're just checking those boxes, we're kind of losing the larger picture about how it is that people are going to engage with the space, with our program, or whatever our offering is. So it's often a very reactive process. People say, oh, we have to make this thing accessible. So how do we do that? Okay, check, check, check. And we'll then consider that thing accessible. It's often driven by perspectives from outside of the disability communities, rather than, and it places disabled folks as kind of passive engagers within the space and within that accessibility. And again, accessibility is really just what we're talking about when we say accessibility is just the bare minimum. Like these are the bare minimum things that someone who, for example, uses a wheelchair will need to be able to access this space. It doesn't necessarily mean that the space will be actually accessible for them. And I do want to point out that, so here I just shifted the photo on the left to represent kind of the updated wheelchair accessibility symbol. And this places, instead of a static image of a stick figure sitting passively in a wheelchair, this symbol represents movement, and the person's arms are kind of pulled back to look like they are rolling in their wheelchair. So this is kind of representative of that shift towards recognizing disabled people as not passive people in the environment, as active and moving. And this slide is titled "What is Access?" On the right-hand side, we have a photo from the Disabled in Here project, and it shows 5 racially diverse disabled people sitting outside on a rooftop deck. And but one of the things I do like to point out about this photo is that even though this project was, of course, created by and for disabled folks to provide representation, even here in this built environment, we have some inaccessible things that are shown here. So we have tables and chairs that are too high for someone who is using a wheelchair or who may have difficulty getting up onto a tall chair. We have another chair that is too small for someone who is fat or plus size. So even when we're trying to provide representation, even when we are trying to provide accessibility, we have these other factors that are in the environment that we need to consider. So what is access? It recognizes the interdependence and complexity of needs. It creates space that is safe and welcoming. It focuses and provides a framework for the collective rights, care, and justice of the community. And it's a much more proactive process. It is often much more community-driven and collaborative, and recognizes that disabled folks have a diversity of access needs. Even one person, 2 people who have the same disability may have different access needs. And sometimes those access needs conflict. Sometimes even within an individual, their access needs can conflict. So for myself, sometimes the things that I need to be able to engage in a space or to just get through my day can really conflict. So that is something that disabled communities have become really skilled at navigating. Like, how do we make this a very individualized and collaborative process to make sure everyone feels safe to be able to engage with this space? So again, the focus with access is really on often on creating change. So it recognizes that to make a space truly access centered, we have to change the culture. We have to change how people think about disability. I could make a space as physically accessible as possible, but if the people who are there are going to be very ableist, if the people who are there don't understand disability, then I'm not going to feel safe in that space. So then it's not truly accessible. So this title slide is Inclusive Programs and Resources Implementing Access. And I'm going to share just a couple of tips about how Disabled Hikers does it, how we create inclusive programs and resources. So tips for creating access-centered programs. The first step, of course, is choosing an accessible location and providing really detailed information up front about the accessibility of that location. So whether you are outdoors somewhere, whether you are hosting a conference in a building, whether you are online, providing really detailed information about that location up front. Be really clear about the expectations that you have for people who are going to engage in that program. And be really clear about the structure of that program and what you will be doing. Consider who is leading the program, and just be really honest. If you have folks who are leading programs who are not trained in disability awareness, I encourage you to find someone to provide that training. But B, just be honest about that. Say, hey, we are learning and we are trying our best. This is their experience and who we have leading this. That way the disabled folks can make their own decision about whether or not they will feel safe in that space, whether that is something they want to engage in. To ask about access needs, you really need to provide multiple opportunities to do that so that people can request accommodations, can share what they need in that space. So at registration, provide an opportunity for someone to share those needs. And then I encourage you to follow up in private after registration if someone has requested something, just to make sure you really understand and give them another opportunity to provide that information. And then in the group, provide opportunities for people to share their access needs as they come up. This can very much be a process for people. A lot of folks aren't used to having that space. So just trying to make it as safe and welcoming as possible. And then check in with people throughout the event to see how they're doing, if there's anything they need in that space, if you need to adjust the pacing, the types of interactions, offer a break, things like that. And then, as I've mentioned before, social justice and cultural change is very much a part of access. So addressing ableism, racism, stereotypes, stigma, all of that within your organizations and communities is really important to creating access-centered programs. So this next slide here is providing trail information. So, and this applies, for any outdoor programs. It's really important to provide that really detailed information about the outdoor space that you'll be in. So that includes directions, road description, how are they going to get there? Is the road, are you going up a narrow dirt forest road? Are you taking a highway there? Describing that so that people are aware. And then describing the parking and the amenities that are available at the site and how they will get to them. Describing the trail design, that includes the surface, the width of the trail, any obstacles that may be in the way, and places to take a break or where they could step away and have a little privacy, take a little break if they need to. And then provide information on the elevation and the length of the trail, the grade, which means, the steepness of any portion of the trail, and the cross slope, which is the steepness going from the inside to the outside of the trail. All of this information is really important for wheelchair users and also other folks. So you can read more about this up on our website, but I just encourage people to familiarize yourself with trail accessibility guidelines if you're doing any kind of outdoor work, so that you are aware of some of those requirements. And overall, just really consider the user experience from start to finish. So this is our thank you slide here. Our website is disabledhikers.com. You can email us at info@disabledhikers.com. We're also on Facebook and Instagram at Disabled Hikers. I do, at the end of any presentation I do, I just want to remind folks that I love to hear from people. I love to receive questions and emails, but of course, as a disabled and chronically ill person, I have limited capacity sometimes to respond to things. So please don't be offended if you reach out and I don't get back to you right away. I'm doing my best. And thank you. That's all I have.
Syren, that was fantastic. So much important and good information. We do have a number of questions, so we'll take a few now and we'll save some for the end if you're up for that. And then Loren will turn it over to you. So Shelby asked, maps rely on people having an understanding of distances such as miles, which is inaccessible for people with cognitive disabilities. Are there any organizations out there who are making radically accessible maps for people? Do you know of anything like that?
No, I don't, unfortunately, yeah.
Well, maybe it's something somebody can take on. William asked, would you be willing to speak on the interconnectedness of other identities and disabilities? And that is race, class, gender, et cetera, and how other forms of oppression relate to disability communities.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, that is a huge question, of course, that I could give an entire presentation plus on. As I mentioned, I am a white person, so I can only speak from experience as a white person, although I am trans and queer and have multiple disabilities and have other axes of oppression, if you will. So it is is, of course, important to recognize many of the racial history involved, particularly within the disability rights movement, and how race has often been left out of the conversation. So has, queer people, LGBTQ people have often been left out of the disability rights movement to date, which is really kind of what gave rise to this shift towards disability justice and really understanding some of those intersections. So if you are not familiar with the principles of disability justice, Sins and Ballad is one organization that has created a framework for that. You can just Google disability justice principles and they will come up. There's a lot of writing available about that online.
Syren, thank you so much. And we have a couple of other questions from Morgan and Shira that we'll ask at the end. And I'm sure some more questions will be coming in after Loren's presentation, but thank you so much for all that you're doing. And I apologize for getting your pronouns wrong at the start. That's something that I was just modeling bad behavior. So really trying to think about what we all can do as we think about this. So Loren, why don't you take over if you would? And I think Anne is going to share your slides and then we'll have questions at the end again.
Thanks. Don't need slides yet. Let me introduce myself. I'm Loren. I'm a 69-year-old white woman. I have COVID length, platinum blonde hair, dark blue rimmed glasses, and sort of a matching dark blue shirt with a colorful logo of the entity I'm here to talk to you about today, with a small child sitting on a boulder clearly in the forest. And I want to start by telling you that I am fortunate to live near an absolutely exquisite public place that is called Letchworth State Park in Western New York. In 2015, it was voted by readers of the USA Today the best state park in the country. And within its 14,000 pristine acres, there's an abundance of two elements in particular: pine forests and the presence of moving water. And those two conditions of nature tend to produce the greatest concentration of negative ions. Now, about 100 years of studies have found evidence that negative ions can reduce stress, boost immune system functioning, help with regulation of sleep patterns, and even with improving mood. Now, I'm an old English teacher, not a scientist, but I became interested in this research after two unrelated neighbors told me about their young autistic grandsons, and both found Letchworth to be their calm and quiet place in this world, and that they loved to visit from when they were here from their very urban homes in Albany and New York City. And at the same time, I was acutely aware of a lack, as Syren has said, of outdoor recreational opportunities, particularly for families living with autism. In fact, activities appropriate for all of the members of disabled families are in very short supply. So this was the genesis of a 7-year journey, which resulted in the Autism Nature Trail, or what we call the ANT for short. And Anne has a slide to show you of the trail map that will give you a sense of the 1 mile loop that we developed. We're not aware of anything exactly like the ANT anywhere in the country. And because we envisioned a very unique experience in nature, we didn't try to retrofit a trail that already existed. Instead, we just started with about a dozen acres granted to us by New York State Parks. And by us, I'm referring to 3 retired women, Susan Gownlock-Hernstein and Gail Cerventi and myself, who made a deal with parks that we would raise the money to design, build, equip, staff, and endow this trail without any funding from parks or New York State. We relied heavily on volunteers at every turn, but especially those who had expertise that we did not, including advice from what we thought was the top. The initial advice came from Dr. Temple Grandin, perhaps the most recognized name in autism advocacy. And she really established our parameters for this project. She started with the words, "Don't build a strip mall nature trail." She warned us that people would try to get us to move the concept to a place where it was more populated than Wyoming County, New York. And she was right about that. But she told us to stay in deep nature where we had negative ions galore. She also said to look for specialized staff. Syren certainly refers to this. Staff of the trail who were both autism experts and experienced in the outdoors, both not one or the other. She told us to design a pre-walk station. That's our Trailhead Pavilion that you see, to orient the visitor. And she suggested that we make the trail a loop so that the ending was apparent at the beginning for establishing a sense of security. And we did that with our celebration station, which essentially is the flip side of the Trailhead Pavilion. She said that, of course, offered challenges to build skills, but because some visitors may never have been on a nature trail, she recommended building in predictability and choice, including opportunities to opt out of the experience. And finally, she reminded us that meltdowns would be inevitable. So we needed to provide safe places for those to happen. Now, my colleague Gail Cerventi convened an impressive all-volunteer advisory panel with experts from public schools, colleges, and community agencies. These were speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, social workers, special educators, university researchers and practitioners, as well as some young adults on the spectrum and several parents and grandparents of autistic children. And their invaluable advice led us to the final design of 8 interactive stations that you see mapped out there. How we came to design them is more interesting, I think, than stations. That for you. And you can start and just kind of run through these photos of the stations. I'm going to try to pick up the pace here. This is the Trailhead Pavilion. As you can see, it looks like a building. We wanted to ease the visitor from civilization into deep nature. And in the pavilion, you can pick up a laminated map to borrow or a picture schedule. We have hand sanitizer, and it's also a place to get your bearings. There are fossil rocks embedded in the walls inside the pavilion, and there are stone benches to sit and get your bearings. But it feels natural. And there is a cement sidewalk leading up and into the Trailhead Pavilion. As soon as you leave, however, the surface changes to a stone dust, ADA compliant, solid, easy to maintain, and very natural looking. The first station, and Anne, I think I have a slide of that, is the sensory station. And it has more of a garden impression than a real forest field, with the weeping pine, weeping white pines, very decorative. There are 2 pavilions. You see one in the photo that have that sense still of structure. There's 2 ornamental carved benches. You also see the surface has changed at each station so that you know it's something different off the main trail. We've used engineered wood fiber, also ADA compliant and durable, but definitely a different feel. And at the sensory station, you have an opportunity to interact with items that you're likely to find along the trail, seed pods and bark and moss and pine cones and nuts, and a chance to really to sort and categorize them, to smell them, to manipulate them, and become familiar with what may be very unfamiliar items. The next slide shows you the second of the interactive stations. This is the Sunshine Slope. And this is a grassy incline that is obscured until you walk along it. The plantings aren't evident in this photo, but we have wildflowers that grow very tall. So it's a leap of faith to follow the path until you get to the cuddle swings. There are 3 of them. And if you need some soft, gentle movement, the cuddle swings are perfect for that. When you reach the top of the slope, there's an opportunity to look out to see where you've been and where you're about to go. The next station is the music circle. And this is a beautiful pine circle of trees. There are 3 percussion, nature-inspired instruments and a wheelchair ramp stage that if you look from above a little bit, this was on purpose, is designed to look like a quarter note. And each of the instruments the sound is controlled by the visitor. There's no accidental noise like with a wind chime. It's purposeful. But just in case it gets too much for anyone, you see a path leading off to the left. There are 2 alone zones, we call them, that are apart from the noise. One has a bench with one of the instruments repeated for someone who's maybe shy, just needs to be away. And there's another alone zone that has simply a bench and an escape route that if the noise is too much, you can go to that bench, take a breather, and then come out to the main trail without having to come back through the music circle. The next slide will show you the reflection knoll. This is the halfway point on the trail, a chance to stop and collect your thoughts. It's the furthest away from the main trail and has 12 boulders in a circle with a center stone. And there's a pattern in the of carvings of woodland animals in the boulders for discovery. And there are 2 small alone zones. Sometimes at this point, if you're working with a school group, for example, you just need a space a little away from the group, but still well within view for someone who needs to just take a little break. Next, you come to the meadow run and climb, which our children have turned into an American Ninja Warrior course. And it is as a grassy hill to ride or walk up, to roll down. And we've had children in wheelchairs climb out of the wheelchairs and roll down the hill while their parents or caregivers pick them up at the bottom with their wheelchairs. There's a log run. There are 4 pieces of playground equipment, and it's turned into, the kids have invented a timed obstacle course running from one end all the way to the other. The next station along the trail is the design zone. We have a number of starter structures made out of locust poles and then natural building materials where you see someone has started what looks like a tent or a teepee. Kids build forts and houses. There's smaller materials for creating little Zen gardens. And there's this is all shaded and such a heavy pine canopy that even in the rain, we find you don't really get very wet. So that this is our truly all-weather station. And finally, the last of the interactive stations is the Playful Path. And I just want to tell you a little bit about how the stations were created. This is a great example. We had a mom who told us about her autistic 8-year-old daughter who was without verbal language, but generally a cheerful child, except when they would go to visit one particular relative. And upon arriving, she would scream inconsolably and be upset through the whole visit, and then get worse when they would go to leave. And it took months of determining that this was the only place the child experienced gravel underfoot in the gravel driveway. And once they figured that out, now they pull the car up on the grass, the child jumps out of the car, runs happily into the house. So we created the Playful Path, which along the main trail, you see a good example of the stone dust in this slide, but there's also stone dust along each of the segments. You see off to the left log rounds that are of different widths and height and separation from each other. If you don't like the feel of that, you can hop off and you're back on the stone surface. And there's a sand segment and a riverstone segment and a large boulder segment. We even put in a leaf segment in the fall for a parent who said she was having trouble getting her child to walk through leaves. She didn't like the rustle of it, and she thought something along this path, which he enjoyed, might introduce that to him. And finally, you get to the celebration station at the end of the trail, right where you started. And there are 2 chalkboards with chalk to record your impression, your feelings, give a rating, a review, sign your name, make an X, draw a picture. The idea is to acknowledge that you were there, you have a voice, and this is yours. This place was designed and made for you. We heard as we developed this project, and it took 7 years from the time we hatched the idea until it opened last October 1st. We heard again and again from families that they were never able to do anything together. And there's wonderful programs being developed that cater to sometimes the client, the autistic child or adolescent or young adult, or the sibling of the disabled child, or the parents or other caregivers, but rarely is there a family opportunity. And that's one of the things we wanted to create. But we also wanted this to be an inclusive environment and fun for everyone, which I think you can get some idea, it certainly is. The idea of, if you remember the 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act, that required in a major intersection in cities, the curb needed to be cut so that wheelchairs could get through an intersection across the street without being impaired. And there was a lot of hoopla over that. How many wheelchairs are there? But very quickly it quieted, and it's been studied. Stanford University's done great studies about the curb cut effect. It turns out everybody liked the curb cuts. Mothers with strollers, people with walkers, artists with portfolios, musicians carrying large instruments, bikers and skateboarders, anyone who found it easier to just go off a slow incline instead of stepping off a curb enjoyed it. So we applied curb cut thinking really to this entire trail. And while we never intended to make it ADA compliant, it became easy to do so with just thinking along those lines. Each of the stations has a 6-foot stone station marker with a bronze plaque. The text is the name of the station. Then there is a representation by a local artist, also done in bronze, that's very tactile. And then the name of the station is repeated in Braille. It was such a simple thing to do. And as we got thinking about all of the different ways that we could make this accessible, it's just like Syren said, it's not just the letter of the law. It's not just about the right incline or the right surface. It's about a welcoming atmosphere. It's about being attractive. It's about having some purpose and, quite frankly, some fun in our case that has made this just a treasure in the #1 state park in the country. Why wouldn't we do something this important in the very best state park, even though we had lots of resistance to move it closer? So we'll get through the transportation barriers to make sure everybody can get there. That's our next big thing. But we're enjoying just in the few months that we've been open, constant use. Ironically, during the winter, our most frequent visitors were senior citizens who are tired of mall walking and love the beauty of being outdoors and are thrilled to have such an exquisite opportunity to get exercise and fresh air. There's so much more, but suffice it to say that families are delighted that they can do something together without fear of anything.
Loren, that was fantastic. I hope you were looking at the chat a little bit and all the comments, both for you, Syren, and Loren, of how important this discussion is and how amazing this trail is and all the thinking that went into that. We have time for a few more questions, and Anna and I will go back and forth. One of the questions, Loren, for you is any advice on grant resources, or first of all, how to do a trail like this, and also how to upgrade a trail that you want to make more accessible. And Syren, you might have ideas as well. And that was from Loren and Danielle, questions from both of them.
I'm going to warn about retrofitting something, because I think sometimes that's where you go wrong. The other thing that I would advise is find the spot that's perfect first, and then design around that, which is what we did. We're close to a nature center, which provides us with indoor facilities, the good bathrooms instead of the park bathrooms, air conditioning in the winter, in the summer heat, in the winter, access to park police, a TTY machine with a landline, Wi-Fi. Those things for our visitors were important. We didn't find a lot of grants, quite honestly, but we raised $3.5 million as of last month, and that was all privately. There's not a penny of municipal, state, or federal funds, a testament to the need for something like this.
Congratulations on that. Anything you want to add, Syren?
No, the funding can be difficult. Sometimes you can find grants through like the trail coalitions at the state and national levels, such as American Trails or your state trail coalition, state park foundations, places like that.
So we had another couple of questions here. Anne, do you have one ready? Do you want to go, or I have a couple?
Sure.
Go ahead.
There's another budget related question. Shira is asking about tactile and braille trailhead kiosk maps, if they are used by any parks agencies that you know of. And related to that, for agencies that have limited budgets, how might you prioritize a trail upgrade? And is there a priority on physical trail or accessible trailhead signage?
What do you think, Syren?
Yeah, I am aware of a few braille trailhead signs. I'm blanking at the moment on where they are, but I can send that information out later. As far as priorities, I do think that providing good trailhead signage is really important, so that disabled folks can just make their own decision when they are right there at the trailhead. I know when I get somewhere and there's a good trail access sign, that empowers me to make my own decision, and that is often kind of low-hanging fruit that people can do rather than trying to change an entire trail.
We spend a lot of time on our website to make sure that people can see as much as possible. One thing I have to point out is that we've had great cooperation from our local high school. Perry High School students are working on a relief map to put in the Trailhead Pavilion. They've been doing drone footage for a video that will give you a video tour from above before you ever leave your home. And they've just been excited about being a part of it. It's in their neighborhood. And don't forget, really wonderful partnerships with schools, public schools and colleges and universities.
Thank you both so much. Excellent presentations. There are several other questions. We'll try and see if you have answers to those and post them on eePro, because we want to make sure we get to the very end here, but really appreciate all you are doing, both of you, to bring this issue to the forefront. We had questions like, what about adults with autism, and different ways to think about movement? And there are just so many things you could talk about. We're going to have a part 2 on this, or a part 3, or a part 4 as well. Anne, do you want to take it away? But thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for the amazing resources in the chat. So many good things. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Yes, there is so much appreciation in the chat, lots of questions. I hope you get a chance to look through that. Lots of appreciation in the chat. So I wanted to just close out today with a few announcements. Lots of folks are asking about the recording and the slides, and yes, you'll all be getting it sent directly to your emails. You'll also find it right on our website. If you head over to the same page you used to register for today's webinar, everything will be posted and shared by the end of the week. And a quick note about the email you'll get, we'll be sharing a link to a very short survey where you can let us know what you think of our webinar series and help us pick future topics and speakers, because we only want to give you the best of the best. And if you like today's webinar, I invite you to check out our entire webinar collection. It's available on our website, and you can see webinars going back to 2015, and it is a great way to spend a free hour. And we are always planning more webinars for all of you. We have one coming up at the end of the month, April 26th. We're hosting another eeINSPIRE webinar, Climate Emotions in Education, with the Climate Mental Health Network and the Sea Change Institute. We'll be hearing from an incredible panel of educators, researchers, experts on climate and eco-anxiety, and they'll share their perspectives on how educators can have a better understanding of the emotional side of teaching about challenging environmental problems. And they'll also be talking about tools and strategies and resources for educators on how you can foster resilience and empowerment in their students. And you can sign up today, and it's going to be great. And the last couple of updates for you all are about some upcoming conferences. The Natural Start Alliance's 2022 Nature-Based Early Learning Conference is going to be in person in Cincinnati, Ohio this summer. And this year's theme is Teaching for Tomorrow, which explores the role of nature-based early childhood education in securing a just and sustainable future for all today. And you can learn more about the conference and featured speakers and browse session lists if you head over to their conference website. And registration will be open soon. And speaking of conferences, NAAEE, our annual conference is happening also in person in Tucson, Arizona in October. And our conference this year is going to be focusing on the powerful role education can play in creating healthier communities and tackling today's complex environmental and social issues. We're now accepting conference proposals that speak to our overall theme, which is educating for change. And proposals can be submitted for the in-person conference in Tucson, as well as an online virtual conference. And proposals are due later this month, April 29th. And that is all from me. Thank you for spending the last hour with us. And big thank you again to Loren and Syren for sharing your stories on how to make the outdoors more accessible for everyone. We really appreciate you and hope to see you all on another webinar very soon. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you both, and thank you, Anne. And we will include all the recordings and information about how to access the archived webinars as well when we send this out. Rachel, thank you. That was fantastic.